It is true that within the political and philosophical history of revolutionary Pan-Africanism, we have had a split. We have had a nationalist versus socialist split, and we still have a nationalist versus socialist split within the world and ranks of Pan-Africanism. There are those who have a leaning or an orientation to Marxism, as you mentioned, and socialism. Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, he was of that energy. Kwame Nkrumah, after he met W.E.B. Du Bois and George Padmore and others, he became C.L.R. James. He became more of that persuasion. So you have had your socialists. Patrice Lumumba was not. Patrice Lumumba was straight up and down nationalist. Amilcar Cabral had socialist leanings. Robert Sobukwe of South Africa, straight up and down nationalist, Pan-African nationalist. I am a straight up and down Pan-African nationalist, as was the most honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. So you do have both of those camps, and that is a debate and a philosophical difference that we will always have. But what we try to do as Pan-Africanists is we try to, as much as we can, although it can't totally be done, is we try to minimize the difference of ideological approach between nationalists and socialists, and we try to unite as much as possible around the central goal of Pan-Africanism, which is the total unification and liberation of African people. But I do not support Pan-African communism or socialism. I don't think Karl Marx or Friedrich Engels or anyone else, Joseph Stalin or any of the rest of them, had anything that I feel I need to make use of in the struggle to liberate African people. As I often tell people, I am not a capitalist or a communist. I am a Pan-Africanist. We have to understand something. The only reason why people would even begin to consider capitalism as a viable economic system of liberation is because slavery gave capitalism a 500-year head start over any other modern economic system. We were the first capital in capitalism, and African people need to understand that. The enslaved African was the first capital in capitalism. So when you force people to work 4 or 5 centuries for free, and you build up wealth off of their backs, which gives birth to an industrial revolution, and you use that to tout how economically intelligent you are, it's very fraudulent, because it was slavery that made capitalism what capitalism is. So along with 𝚂𝚗𝙱𝚂𝙸𝙱𝚴, Malcolm X, fellow Pan-Africanist, child of the Garvey movement, I would agree capitalism has no solutions in it for black people. But what we have amongst us is we have capitalist-minded neo-Negroes who try to seduce black people into thinking that imitating the white man's economic system offers some hope for black economic liberation. And that is totally dishonest. It is opportunistic. It has no evidence to support it. Capitalism has never saved anybody. It didn't save Europe. It didn't save Asia. It didn't save Africa. Capitalism is not a system that one uses to liberate. Capitalism is the exploitation of the many by the few. Capitalism seeks to make 99% of the world the dependency of the 1% of the world. In America, we have about 100 Europeans who own more wealth than everybody else in the country. And globally, there's about 1,000 people who own more wealth than the rest of the world put together. That is capitalism. How can anyone believe that a system as exploitative, selfish, and unfair as that can be used to liberate African people? Capitalism cannot be on the table of discussion if we're talking liberation economics. As far as the privatization of industry, I believe that everything should be nationalized, or at least should be considered to be nationalized, unless the government has a rationale that would justify why any of the major industries are in the hands of private citizens. And I would dare argue that nobody but a capitalist would want to put critical industries in the hands of private citizens. For example, why is food in the hands of private citizens? Okay. Why is healthcare in the hands of private citizens? Why is water in the hands of private citizens? Anything that is critically necessary for the survival of humanity should never be privatized. Because when you privatize food, when you privatize land, when you privatize agriculture, when you privatize water, when you privatize medical health care, you are in essence giving individuals control over the lives of others. And I don't support that.
I would just like to say, add in here that, you know, as far as we are concerned, there's basically, as far as we are concerned, there's basically two types of economic system. One controlled by a minority, or the one controlled by the majority. And capitalism is controlled by the minority. And if you see that, you can understand why we are experiencing so much difficulties in our lives as people all around the world.
In the add to what my elder just said, the European has done an excellent job. He has done a marvelous job convincing black people globally that capitalism can actually work. And so you have black people. Oh, go ahead. Okay, no, that's the call. He has convinced black people that capitalism can actually work. But when you look closely at capitalism, you can see that capitalism gives rise to poverty.
That's right.
You can't be capitalist and not believe in poverty. Because in order for the rich to get rich, they have to exploit people's labor at a low cost. If there is not a large exploitable class of cheap labor, there is no capitalism. And that's why you can always find poor people a stone's throw away from the richest businesses and corporations in any country. Because capitalism is the mother of poverty.
Too much of us are comfortable in our suffering for whatever reason. I don't know. I'm not comfortable because I see too much suffering out there. You know, you go to the jails, you go to the graveyard, and it's our people, our young people, mostly are in these jails. You go to the graves, you know, our young people are there. You know, how could we accept and be comfortable in a system that is a product of all these things that I just spoke about? You know, if you really care, you know, you can't. And you must continue to fight, and you must continue to support brothers like Dr. Umar, who's trying to make a difference in our lives and in the world.